Welcome back. As part of our Deadly Duo series, this video looks at the case of Gemma Lilley and Trudy Lennon and the brutal murder of a young, innocent man simply because killing someone was on their bucket list. Gemma Victoria Lilley was born in Stanford, Lincolnshire in England. Her parents separated when Gemma was very young. Gemma's mother suffered a mental breakdown and later joined a spiritual cult, and her father, Richard, gained custody of the children. By the age of 6, Gemma had been diagnosed with dyslexia and was on the high-functioning end of the autism spectrum. She grew up watching films about serial killers, even dressing as her favourite characters. She began collecting butcher knives and, not surprisingly, developed an obsession with death and dying. At age 16, Gemma began writing a novel under the pen name Sin Demon, which she called Playzone. The completed 200 pages were based around the character of a charismatic serial killer who called himself SOS, as a tribute to real-life serial killer David Berkowitz, who became infamously known as Son of Sam after murdering 6 people during the 1970s. In the novel, SOS is the leader of a death cult and calls his followers maggots. These maggots would do anything their leader tells them to, including torture and killing people. Gemma dreamt that her novel would be published someday. While studying video game design at college, she even imagined her book inspiring a gaming cult, making her rich and famous. In reality, the novel was poorly written, littered with spelling errors, and offered no real storyline, just pages of gratuitous torture and killing. When her father remarried, her stepmother, Nina, described Gemma as a creepy child and thought that the novel was sick and twisted. But her father didn't seem to have a problem with Gemma's dark obsession. He even went as far as making her a copy of the black lead mask that SOS wore in the novel. The marriage eventually broke down, and Nina left the family home because she was so disturbed by Gemma's behaviour. A small extract from the novel reads, "I feel as though I cannot rest until the blood or the flesh of a screaming, pleading victim is gushing out and pooling on the floor. Until all the roads and streets are streamed red and abandoned, and the fear in the back of everyone's minds and on the tongue of each human that's left standing is SOS." In 2010, at the age of 18, Lilley packed up and flew to Australia on a 2-year working visa. She settled in Perth, Western Australia, and worked days at a tattoo parlour and nights as a shelf filler at a Woolworths supermarket. Her arrival in Australia inspired Lilley to continue to write about her favourite topic, and she contributed to the US magazine Serial Killer with stories about historic Perth killer Eric Edgar Cooke and the perpetrator of the Port Arthur massacre, Martin Bryant. She self-published her novel Playzone, which even had its own Facebook page. A mutual friend introduced her to a gay Australian man, Gordon Galbraith. Galbraith agreed to marry her to help her secure permanent residence. Lilley nicknamed Galbraith Gacy because she claimed he resembled American serial killer John Wayne Gacy. The bizarre wedding in 2012 was themed around horror movie killers, including Gemma's personal favourite, Freddy Krueger, from the movie Nightmare on Elm Street. She'd previously written to the actor who played Freddy, Robert Englund, telling him that Krueger was her idea of the perfect father figure, and was thrilled to receive a signed photograph in return. Strangely, it was Gemma's own father who dressed as Freddie for her wedding to Galbraith. But the ultimate thrill came when she met the actor at a Comic-Con festival in Perth. He autographed her leg, which she then had permanently tattooed. 2 years after their wedding, Galbraith died in a car accident. It was through a friend of her late husband that Gemma met 43-year-old mother of 3, Trudy Lennon. Trudy was heavily involved in the BDSM scene. For those who don't know what that is, it's a sexual practice involving role-playing in bondage, dominance, submission and masochism. Trudy Lennon preferred to play the submissive role and used the role-playing name of Corvina. The friendship began innocently enough, with Gemma agreeing to help Trudy slim down through swimming and exercise. Then, as she did with anyone who would listen, Gemma began discussing her novel with Trudy and gave her a copy to read. It wasn't long before Trudy started sharing her own dark fantasies. Trudy was engaged, but when the engagement fell through and she began to struggle financially, Gemma invited her and the 2 sons she had living with her to move into her home at 22 Broughton Way in the Perth suburb of Orelia. Trudy truly became the submissive, doing everything for Gemma. She began calling her new master SOS and was tattooed as a sign of being owned. In the short space of just 3 weeks after moving in, the text and Facebook messages shared between the 2 women showed an escalating increase in the need to fulfil their dark fantasies. Gemma, now 24, revealed that killing someone before reaching the age of 25 had been on her bucket list for many years, and she was finding it more and more difficult to control her urge. She needed to let SOS free and become the serial killer she had always dreamed of being. Trudy expressed her total devotion and would do anything to help her master. It was Trudy who decided on the perfect victim. 18-year-old Aaron Pavich. By all accounts, Aaron, who had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, was a loving, childlike, trusting person. He had lived in the same street as Trudy Lennon and played video games with her 14-year-old son. He knew her and he trusted her. Being a bit of a gaming and computer whiz, Aaron didn't hesitate when Trudy called him on the morning of June 13, 2016, to ask if he would install some gaming programs onto her computer. They arranged to meet at the Rockingham Shopping Centre. Aaron was boarding with a woman called Adrian Reed. They'd met through a church group, and Adrian offered Aaron a room in her home. Adrian drove him to the shopping centre and says he was so happy to be helping his friend Trudy and thought he might get to play some games with his little buddy, Trudy's son. That was the last time Adrian would ever see him. When he didn't return that night, Adrian became concerned. She called, but his phone kept going to voicemail. She searched all his favourite spots, the college, the park, his gaming haunts, but he was nowhere to be found. She contacted Aaron's dad. If Trudy Lennon thought she had chosen the perfect victim, someone who would not be missed, she couldn't have been more wrong. The police were already involved, searching and calling for public help to find Aaron. Meanwhile, Gemma Lilly was bragging to co-worker Matthew Stray that she'd finally done it. Stray said it was like an excited secret she wanted to tell me. I asked her, did what? And she said, I did it. I killed someone. Then she showed him a picture of Aaron Pavich and a tattoo she planned on getting to commemorate the murder. When he suggested he might have to go to the police, she said if he did, she would have to make that problem go away. When police reviewed CCTV footage from the day Aaron was dropped off at the Rockingham shopping centre, the 18-year-old can be seen getting into the back seat of a car with two women in the front. But ultimately, it was Trudy Lennon's morning call to Aaron Pavich that led police to their door. Forensic analysis of the call log for Aaron's phone number revealed the last number he had spoken to. That number led to the address of 22 Broughton Way, Aurelia, and straight to Trudy Lennon and Gemma Lilly. On June 20th, the police visited the macabre home. On the gate hung a sign that read, Elm Street, a tribute to Lily's favourite movie, Nightmare on Elm Street. Inside the house was decorated with horror film paraphernalia, creepy dolls, violent artwork, and a large collection of knives. A square section of carpet next to the computer desk had been cut away. Police had to force their way into a locked, tarpaulin-covered room with a window covered in black plastic. A flattened-out shopping trolley with a board on it lay on the floor. It contained a gurney and a bright red utility cupboard. Gemma seemed almost proud to show them around. She even lifted the tarpaulin on the side of the backyard shed to show them the concrete and tiles she had just laid down, an act psychologists would later describe as a belief in her confidence to trick the police and, in her mind, being much more intelligent than they were. She was wrong. The next day the police returned with a warrant and a forensic team. They seized evidence including a hunting knife, a meat cleaver, military and machete-style knives, and a butcher and surgeon's knives. A notebook found in the house contained 5 handwritten pages of torture methods such as branding, castration, Chinese water torture, foot roasting, genital mutilation, force feeding, and kneecapping. A saucepan appeared to contain store-bought meat, which was dissolving in some form of acid. A garrote was also seized and was described by a police officer as having 2 blue plastic handles on each end, secured into a stiff metal wire link. Evidence from the women's phones revealed messages that were dated on the same day that Aaron disappeared, which showed Gemma to be in a euphoric state. She writes, I am seeing things I haven't seen before and feeling things I haven't felt before. It's incredibly empowering. Thank you. To which Trudy replies, you are welcome, SOS. But it was their own CCTV home footage, filmed at 10:30 a.m. on the morning Aaron disappeared, that appears to show the last moments of his life. Aaron is seen following the women inside the house. A few minutes later, Trudy can be seen coming out and locking the gate, presumably to prevent Aaron from escaping. In her hand she is carrying a large knife as she re-enters the home. Finally, police removed the newly laid tiles and concrete from the backyard and found Aaron's body, buried in a 30-centimetre deep makeshift grave. It would later be revealed in court that Trudy's 14-year-old son was asked to help lay the tiles, totally unaware that he was helping to cover the body of his gaming friend. Gemma Lilly and Trudy Lennon were arrested and charged with the murder of 18-year-old Aaron Pavich. Each woman quickly turned against the other. Gemma said she had gone to bed while Aaron was working on the computer. When she awoke the next morning, Aaron's bag was still there, but he was gone. Trudy Lennon said she had no idea Lily planned to kill Mr. Pavich and only admitted to helping to conceal the crime. Aaron's family had to endure a 5-week trial in which the details of his death were revealed. While sitting at the computer, Gemma Lilly came up from behind and tried to choke him with a wire garrote, but the wire broke. His autopsy revealed that Aaron had fought for his life. His body showed defensive wounds and he had tried to bite his attacker. Trudy Lennon then pinned Aaron to the floor, while Gemma stabbed him 3 times, once in the neck and twice in the chest. More CCTV footage was introduced at the trial, showing Lily and Lennon shopping at 2 different Bunnings stores just days before the murder. Receipts found at their home revealed they had purchased hydrochloric acid, 40 litres at the first stop and 60 litres at the second, as well as a circular saw, acetone, bleach, a large drop sheet and a large blue barrel. Why the hydrochloric acid was never used remains unclear, but police believe the hidden room was where the women intended to use it. The family had to watch the footage of the final hours of Aaron's life, getting into the car with the women at the shopping centre and innocently entering their home. The footage of Lennon locking the gate and returning with a knife, and, heartbreakingly, police footage of Aaron's body being exhumed from the makeshift grave in their backyard. He was wrapped in a sheet and tarpaulin, and his head was wrapped in cling wrap. The jury took just 3 hours to find both women guilty, and each was sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 28 years. Gemma Lilly launched an appeal, with her defence counsel arguing that her book, Playzone, should not have been put before the jury as evidence, as it was not of significant probative value. Her appeal was denied. She later became involved with neo-Nazi killer Melanie Atwood, while both were incarcerated in Melaleuca Jail in Canning Vale, Western Australia. The pair openly announced marriage plans, but their relationship sparked complaints from other inmates and prison staff, and Atwood was transferred to Bandy Up Women's Prison. Lily was reportedly moved to a regional jail. In 2018, while standing in line for medication at Bandy Up Prison, Trudy Lennon received severe burns to 30% of her body when a fellow inmate poured boiling water over her. For someone the women thought no one would miss, over 300 people attended a vigil for Aaron Pavich, the lovable, loving, innocent young man whose future had been brutally stolen. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more murder, mystery and mayhem. Until next time.